So far this day, we have had very many new insights from a neurological perspectives, from epidemiological perspectives. We learned about children at different ages. We now have the last session of this day, and I promise you that you will get even more new perspectives before you leave here. The next speaker is Kristofer Hansson, who is working here in Lund, and he's an ethnologist at Lund University. He's also the director of HAREC, which is a disability center. And he's in his research, he studies, among others, children and young people that spend a lot of time in habitation care because of their disabilities. He does this with his ethnological eyes, which gives us new insights, I think. He's going to speak about different things today. I thought he was going to speak about young people with hearing impairments and what the sound environment does to them. But he says it's a little bit more complicated to that and than that. We will see what it will be about. Thank you, Kristofer.
Thank you. Thank you. So, my name is Kristofer Hansson, and I'm working as a researcher at the Institute for Art and Cultural Science here in Lund. My main target is ethnology, and I have this focus on disability research. So my presentation today will shortly present these two books. Sound Take Place, or is a book that was published last year with a couple of colleagues, focusing on how we can use disability perspectives on sounds. And the other book, published 2 years ago, is a focus on participation and how to work with participation in habilitation. And I think those two perspectives need to be combined in different ways. Try to understand how we can continue working with participation in different ways, also related to sound environments and children. And my perspective on this is from the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disability. That is my standpoint, one can say. And both books discuss this and take it as a beginning and try to develop it in different ways. So I think that is a good start to see what the Convention says. So I will read. The purpose of this present convention is to promote, protect, and ensure the full and equal enjoyment of all human rights and fundamental freedom by all persons with disabilities, and to promote respect for their inherent dignity. Persons with disability include those who have long-term psychical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder the full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. So, what I want to highlight with this text is the word participation, and that is a central term in the convention, in this convention, and something that the whole society today shall work with in different ways. So we need in different ways to see how we can develop it and how we can go further with this word. And I also think that we need to have an perspective with many different science on it, both methodological and theoretical, to understand it and develop it. And as you probably also know, this convention also has a child perspective, and I will shortly just present those two also. So the first one is that states parties shall take all necessary measures to ensure the full enjoyment by children with disabilities of all human rights and fundamental freedoms on an equal basis with other children. And the second one is, in all action concerning children with disabilities, the best interest of the child shall be a primary consideration. And the last one is that parties shall ensure that children with disabilities have the right to express their views freely on all matters affecting them, their views being given due right in accordance with the age and maturity on an equal basis with other children, and to provide with disability and age-appropriate assistance to realize that right. So how do I problemize this? Well, my main goal is, or my main theoretical standpoint is that I see it from the social and medical model of disability. This is a central perspective that takes its standpoints as against a critics against the medical model. That is that the person that should change in different ways. Instead, the social model points out that the disability instead are created in the environment, as we have seen and heard today. Hinders are in this way not the body, but that we live in a society that is not constructed for all people. This gives us a perspective on participation that should take a focus on the environment, on the sound environment, and have a focus on the social model. What we try to raise in our books is that this is a good beginning, but at the same time, we still have a body, of course. We need to ask ourselves, how do we relate and how can we relate to the body in different ways? Because this theory and also the convention is rather bodiless, one can say, that the body is not there. And we need to have a theoretical and perspective on how to relate and deal with questions concerning the body. What happens with the body, in other words. So our questions in both of the books, but mainly in the books about the sound environments, is how we can take a different perspective on how we relate to the body and how we experience different body affections. So what we need to do is to have a perspective that in much more precise way take the sensory, our senses in light, and take that the senses is important in different ways, and how we both hear and see and feel the world around us. And try to understand how this could be related to different cultural structures. In our field, this has been called the sensory turn, and something that we use in our studies to try to understand how the body in different ways take place and becomes apparent in different places. But at the same time as we have seen today, one problematic situation is that that we have this disability relation that creates situations that is problematic in different ways. So what we need to also have in this discussion is how in different ways we can focus on places that becomes problematic in different ways, and what happens in those places. So another concept in this relation is that we need to talk about different places as critical. That we have a sound environment that could work, but at the same time in different situation that is turned around and it becomes critical for the individual in different ways. And at those moments, the individual needs to relate to his or her body, relate to the social environment, what the person should do, and also act upon this. Should I tell about my disability? Should I hide it? Should I go away? Should I try just to hang on and try to overcome the problems that is in the situation? So what we try to do with these termed critical places is to find out those places that becomes critical, and in those places when it becomes critical, try to understand what is it that is critical here and how do the individual act in different ways and what kind of bodily emotion appear at these places. So one can say that is a methodological point of view that we can use, try to understand how everyday life is emerging in different ways. This is also connected to something that we try to have a more power relation perspective, trying to understand how different ideological perspective is hindering the person. And one thing that we have developed critical places with is Rob Kitchin, that already in the 1990s stated that the specialities of disability are configured to convince disabled people that they are out of place and to keep them in their place. Connecting this to critical places, one can say that when a place becomes an out of place, it is a place that the person needs to relate to, and also there are risk that the person also have feelings of not being a part of the place. So connecting the body perspective and the bodily feelings with the perspective of power is important here to understand how the sound environment is evolving in different ways. But as I pointed out in the beginning, we have this perspective on participation at the same time from the convention. So what I have tried to do here is that the main goal is to have a perspective that all people should participate in our society, but at the same time we know that some people have not the possibility to do that because we have different hindrances in our society that not make it possible to take part of life. And one way to understand this is to use this perspective on how places are how people becomes out of places. But at the same time, as we discuss in our book about habilitation, we present different ways of how to deal with children and participation. And one central perspective that also has been discussed here today is this: if we should have a child perspective or a child's perspective. And of course, this is discussed in relation to the discussion of participation. And one central part here is that we should always see the children as experts on their own lives, trying to understand how they are taking place in different ways and how they are living their lives in different sound environments. And as we point out in this anthology, is that this is a perspective where we see the children as subjects. So, thank you.